questions if you have anything. And if you have any thoughts about it, or you have any questions later when you've had an opportunity to mull over what's been said, then you can always call me and ask me questions. Call me. I'm in the book, whatever book you've got. I'm still in there. Give me a call. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. This is Jim Hanifin, and we call this group, because the name is rather complicated, we call it C&B Architects, and this is John McMillan, two architects who are going to give us the story. Okay, your show, John.
All right. For the record, it's not very hard. It's Kalo and Bieniek. Thank you very much for selecting our firm to continue with your study. We have, I won't go through our experience, but we're pretty experienced in this type of facility. And we have, as of earlier today, we've met with the Senior Center Director and part of her staff to review what we typically describe as the space needs of a facility. What spaces and functions and programs does the Senior Center have or need that we would like to program for a future facility? So we go through all the different types and functions of a senior center, determine what spaces will accommodate those programs and functions, and then we sort of drill down into each space to how many people are in each space, what the purpose, what furniture, fixtures, or equipment may service them, so that we can develop a description of the space and determine what the appropriate size of that particular space is. And we do that for every space in the facility, from the lobby and reception area to the director's office to the janitor's room to the electric and sprinkler room or electric room, great room, kitchen. All those spaces will be described in a report that we provide called the Space Needs Analysis.
Mr. McMillan, can I stop you just for a minute? The audience is having difficulty hearing you.
Sorry, this.
Do we have a mic?
These mics only work for the TV.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
They don't work for the audio. I'm just wondering if the speaker could stand at the end.
I'll be fine with that.
That
you have a
would
mic?
make it a lot
Sure.
better for us.
All right. How's this? All right. Did you hear any of that?
That mic only works for the TV.
Sure, but I still have to be heard there too. So,
Yeah.
all right. So we've gone through with the Senior Center Director and part of her staff to develop what we call a space needs assessment for all the different spaces, program spaces, functional spaces that they will need, that they have now, and then how they would like to function in a new facility. Some of it is projection, because there's spaces which the Senior Center does not have now, but projects they will need. And a lot of this is determined on review of other similar senior centers that have been, programs or spaces that have been successful in other facilities that we predict would be successful here, based upon the fact that, similar use, similar constituency users of the facility. So we've gone through that. We've written pages of notes, and what we will be delivering from that is a space needs analysis, which is a report, description of every space, what goes into it, and most importantly, what the size of that particular area would need to be to accommodate that function, that program. Then we will sum those spaces up into a sort of a total area requirement of the building. These areas that we are discussing are what we call net areas, the area of the building inside the walls of the room, the net clear area of the building. To that, we have to add a factor which includes the wall thickness, structure, circulation, corridor space, which we don't know what that is, but there's values of net to gross that we will use that are standard across the industry. And then we'll come up with what we predict based upon this program of spaces, what is the overall area of the building that this program would require. The next step would be to look at that and to develop an initial budget. Basically, at this point, we don't have any designs. We only know that it's going to be X number of square feet. So we develop, we create a budget based upon a square foot analysis, basically similar senior centers based upon this time, as 2018 or so, 2019, what the cost will be for a square foot of a senior center. And we apply that so we can come up with an initial budget. It's very initial, very, very preliminary, but at least there's a corresponding probable cost to this facility, this size facility. From there, and I will mention that the space needs we've developed today was based upon the premise of what is a preferable senior center, what is an optimal senior center in our estimation, in the senior center director's estimation for Groveland. When you have the budget for that program, then you would compare that to where you would like to be or where you think you can be as far as affording a senior center. And if necessary, then, and we need to consider reduction of spaces because it's more than you think could be supported by the town, then we would go through there, develop priorities, prioritize the spaces, and as necessary, develop a second or third revision to the space needs, which would lower the area of the building and therefore lower the cost of the building to a point where there's a consensus that everybody that has what they need and has the building that they want to afford. So that would be going through this. So at the end of that, you'd have a consensus space needs and a consensus preliminary budget for the project. And that's sort of the task that we're on right now. Other tasks that we'd be associated with would be analyzing the site, which we've spent some time here prior to our meetings to walk the site, understand the adjacencies and the conditions of the site. We need to speak to a few departments about the site and how, a structure on that site would operate and connect to utilities and what are the opportunities we would have and what difficulties there may be with that particular site so that we can consider those in developing a budget that would include site work. Because we've already talked about what the building costs would be for a building, but it's independent of what the site costs would be. So you also have to look at the budget, you have to look at developing what site costs, site infrastructure expenses there might be. So we would be developing that once we have the approved space needs and we have a copy of a survey, which I think that's all we're going to get. We're not going to do any survey work as part of this project, at least that's what we've been discussing. Working from the existing survey, we would create a plot plan of a building of the area that we're talking about. We would develop it to show, based upon the consensus space needs, the consensus program, a preferable layout. Part of our discussions today with the senior center and staff is how they would like the building laid out. What room wants to be adjacent to what room? What spaces might be multi-purpose and you can get a lot of uses out of them? What type of spaces might need plumbing, proximity to water, and other situations like that. So we would develop a preliminary layout plan based upon the consensus space needs, and review that with the committee and town to make sure that, everybody has an opportunity to discuss that, bring recommendations, suggestions. We're not always get it right the first time. This is a process of a very iterative process, many iterations to get to something that we can get to the widest possible consensus. We would be citing that preliminary plan on the site. This particular site is not very large, so there's not going to be a lot of, not going to be 6 options to site a building on this particular site, but we will site a building on the site, show you what opportunities there may be for development of space, looking at what exterior spaces may want to be associated with the senior center. There could be, some patio space. We were mentioning a space for possibly, some future barbecue function, maybe small or large, some outdoor recreational areas, horseshoes or bocce or some type of exterior activity to bring seniors outdoors in a community activity area. So we'd be developing that, coming up with a more defined cost estimate based upon that plan now. Now, we have more information. We know what the layout is. We've considered what the building might look like as far as exterior elevations. We understand that we'd like to be compatible with the current campus here of municipal buildings that we have here. Brick exterior, some of the simple gable treatments that you have, the venting, some of the aesthetic values that you have here. And we'd be developing cost estimate based upon the plan, elevations of the buildings which we would propose, which would hopefully, meet with approval, that would be compatible with the existing, the site plan that we would develop, and we would prepare a summary cost estimate for those drawings, that design. And from that, being an iterative process, by the time we get to the conclusion of that, we hopefully have everyone's acknowledgement that this is the best, senior center approach going forward. Again, this is just a study. It's not a set of construction documents. There would be, if funded, this project would go out and you'd have another opportunity to select an architect and an opportunity to select a owner's project manager and develop this project in detail. This is just a study, sort of a feasibility study, determine what is the probable cost and what is a preferred, general preliminary design for a facility.
One of the experiences that we had when we did the Bagnell School, John, was that we had 2 or 3, I can't remember exactly, we had 3, I think, designs, and we selected one out of them. Now, maybe this is asking too much, I don't know. Would it be possible for us to have, say, 2 designs to compare so people could sort of choose? Is that unrealistic?
No, it's not unrealistic. Once we would get into developing the space needs assessment and the adjacencies, depending upon the flexibility of that program, then you could see more than one option. Generally, in a senior center design, the options are pretty limited. Your site is pretty limited. So not all shapes of buildings will fit on that particular site. So you do have some limitations that we have to consider. But if feasible and there is we could give you a second option that, might not look satisfactory in anyone's opinion. But we'd like to, if there is one that we think has legs, so to speak, that is has good points to it, then certainly we would provide it.
Okay.
Not an issue.
Anybody have any other questions?
Well, we had, in our previous discussion, when the architects were selected, we had looked at, I'm speaking from the construction aspect, we had looked at, okay, maybe we get the brick veneer to match town hall, the safety center, the elderly housing. That's rather pricey. Maybe we go with a standard siding structure, but in the same architecture type as what we've got around here in the so-called campus. But that's quite a ways down the road. I think that these architects have got our best interests in mind. They're talking with Lynn, they're gonna talk with, I assume, Bobby Arkelian for water and sewer. They'll talk with the light department for where the power is, and all the other departments. So, kind of get a rough plan together, get a budget put together, and then it's time to bring it to the selectmen, get their input, maybe the finance committee, then go to town meeting and present it to not only us senior citizens, but the whole body of the town, to get it to be approved there, and then it has to go to a ballot, and then we can get funding and go into what they call CDs and DDs, which are the actual drawings that show you where to put the studs, where to put the ventilation, where to put the kitchen, and kick it off. It's not gonna be a 6-month process. It's gonna take a while. But I think we're on a very good start, and several of us have been on the previous, we worked on the Bagnell. I'm presently on a couple other committees, so it's in the works, it's finally moving, and I think Lynn and Anita and several other people that I've talked with are ecstatic. Is that a good word, Lynn?
I have talked with Eric Killian, and I sort of chatted him along and said, could you assist us in the site development? And he said yes. So
Who is this?
this is the
Highway Department.
Highway Department. He did a considerable, in fact, he saved us a huge amount of money on the Bagnell School project because of that. So hopefully that will assist us in not spending too much money on site development.
Okay. Well, we'd have a conversation with him once we understood the scope of the site work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Determine what would be appropriate, what
Right.
may not be.
Does everybody know where the site is? Okay. Nods a yes, that's good. It's basically the, between the elderly housing and the parking lot, and it's
Sort of
mainly
behind
open, and there's a few big trees that we've actually talked with these gentlemen about saving,
Not yet.
and it'll be central to a lot of easily get to facilities. It's a small jaunt to get over to the library. It's even a shorter walk to get to town hall, or and all the other transportation services. It isn't like it's stuck way out on the end of Center Street or something. And the land was voted by the selectmen for this, so there is no cost there.
But it's gonna take the townspeople to vote for it. You're gonna have to do a lot of work to convince everybody, when we get down to the last bid, to vote for it.
Yeah.
You know, that's gonna be the sell. We're gonna need all the help we can get to pursue that avenue when it gets there.
It's called arm twisting, in case you didn't know it.
Speaking of arm twisting, I've been trying to get Bobby Arakilian to name the center room the Arakilian family knew, so I'm still working on that. He has run the other way when he sees me coming, but I just tease him every chance I get about that. One of the things from my point of view, and of course I have a lot of points of view on this, but I feel very strongly that one of the things that we've been lacking, and one of the things that I think we want to invest some really close look at is a, maybe not a commercial type kitchen, but a kitchen where we can provide hot meals and we can do many more things than we're able to do now or have ever been able to do. This is just something I think we all felt very strongly about that. I know when we were up in the firemen were letting us use their little space. We had some facilities, sort of like apartment-like facilities, but we'd really like to be able to do, to have a major and strong things that aren't gonna break down quickly, and one that can produce good output, and maybe even get the Meals on Wheels back into our vicinity again. There are a lot of people that would be served by that, and that's, I think we need to make an investment back into that activity that we once had many years ago, Valerie, as you know. So.
Kevin, do you have any thoughts?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. You're ducking again, okay. Okay, can we ask, when do you think we will be getting together again to look at some of the ideas that you have?
Well, what I would like to do, since we had a conversation with the senior center director and staff, is the initial draft of the space needs, I would bring only to them.
Okay.
To make sure that I understood what was spoken and what they spoke about, because I wouldn't want to
Right?
distribute something that we weren't, that I didn't understand correctly. So,
Okay.
once we've agreed that this is what we discussed and what we'd like to proceed with, then share it with the community of the town, and then have a meeting to sit down, review it with you, describe it to you so you understand what it's all about. It's maybe hard reading or reading, instead of reading in between the lines, have it explained. And then, at the same time, show you the associated cost, at least the budget for that particular space needs program, and have you decide at that point where you'd like the study to go.
How long do you think this process will take in order to get us to that point?
Probably 2 weeks for me to give something to Lynn and her staff, and then I'm uncertain how many iterations might happen after that. Could be 1 or 2 weeks after that, so.
Okay, so we're
3
talking about a
weeks,
month.
3 to 4 weeks, I would say.
Okay,
That's
excellent.
satisfactory.
Okay, that's good. All right,
Got
Kim?
my hand up back.
yes. Open for questions now. We're,
People ask a question and back and forth, use the microphone so everybody can hear the question.
well, I have been, believe it or
Those
not.
mics will not project out here, they're strictly for television.
Okay.
These mics are for the TV only, my understanding.
We don't
Some of
have
us
a
can
mic,
talk.
is that
We should have
right?
we should have a floor mic, and we will have them in the future. I'm sorry about that.
No?
I'll make sure somebody is here that has the podium up.
Okay, that's what we.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Questions from the floor?
Next, you wanna say anything else?
You guys are covering it, great.
No. I don't wanna take anybody's glory.
That's okay. He's driving.
Does anybody have any questions out there on the floor that would like to ask, or any input they'd like at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
When this project started, I'm John Osborne's wife, by the way, his better half.
Okay. See, I can't say anything to that right now.
Very wise, John, very wise.
When this project started, a group of us, including Lynn and several of us, and John and I, went on a tour of half a dozen senior centres in the area. And which was the one that we liked?
Westminster.
Westminster, which
Yes.
was one that you were involved
Yes.
in, I think.
He was the architect.
You were the architect of Westminster, and you very much liked what
Thank you.
Westminster did. So I think one of the things that will be a selling point, I think, for the community, not just the seniors, but that in off hours, when the seniors are not using the
Mhm.
facility, it can be made available for the rest of the community.
True.
And we haven't got that many facilities in town, in Groveland, that are good for the community to use.
Sure.
We've got the school now and this beautiful building that you group were involved with, but we really need more facilities where scouts and schools
Mhm.
and older people can get together for events. So
Sure.
I think you did that in Westminster.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a real selling point for here.
Yeah, it's a common function to many senior centers to have evening activities, group activities there, yes.
Yeah.
Lynn's got a hand up.
I was just gonna say, when we did the tour of other senior centers, we focused on cities and towns that had populations like Groveland. So we didn't, even though the new Newburyport Senior Center is beautiful and it serves a great function, it's sort of what we call the Taj Mahal. It's a whole lot more than we're able to provide, and more grand than we necessarily need. But we focused on smaller senior centers that were built within the past few years, that had the sort of room use that we would want for things like game day, an area for our friends group. When we have fitness classes, there was space. They had wonderful kitchens, not over the top, but useful, so that when you have a function, you can provide a lunch or a dinner. You can do things in the evening that we're not able to do currently. It had great space for movies and those sorts of things. Arts and crafts room, and they weren't grand, they weren't huge, they weren't imposing, they weren't scary, but they were well laid out. In particular, we really enjoyed Westminster because the exterior was not unlike what we have available here in Groveland, so that the new building would blend. We would be good neighbors to the folks that are at River Pines, who aren't just folks over 60, but many under 60, so that the look of what was created in Westminster was something that would blend very nicely with our group of buildings here, because, you know, we sort of have it all in terms of, proximity to each other. You know, the library's right here, town hall, you can come in, do your town business here, and then pop over to the senior center. And we wanted to make sure that this new building that we would like to create would also be a good neighbor to both the folks at River Pines as well as the other buildings that are already here in the town area.
Any other questions? Guys, are there any other questions? Well, it looks like we're done. Wow, record time, 30 minutes. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Okay, thank you. We'll wait for the delivery a month from now. Thank you.